Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. At the end of The Last Jedi, the audience was left with a lot of big questions. Like, who's the bad guy now that Snoke's gone? Or is Luke naked in the afterlife because he clearly left his robes behind? And of course, what is going to happen to the Resistance? There's so few fighters left now that they can all easily fit in the Millennium Falcon. How are they ever going to rebuild and take on the First Order with such small numbers? Will their Outer Rim allies finally show up, or will some old Rebel heroes come out of retirement? Well, that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be taking a look at what happens between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, and who will join the Resistance or rejoin the Resistance. So sit back, enjoy the video, and have a happy Thanksgiving, y'all. In the aftermath of the evacuation of Dakar, the Resistance's two main objectives are to find new recruits and materials to rebuild their movement, and more importantly, find a base that they can actually gather at. Unfortunately, most worlds are far too scared to shelter them from the First Order. The Death Star looks puny next to Starkiller Base. Forget just taking out one planet, the First Order took out an entire system. Well, they did at least. Now they don't have the Starkiller anymore. One potential world for a Resistance base was Ikhruk. It was even liberated by Resistance fighters, and still the only gratitude that the locals dared show the Resistance was giving them some fuel so that they could quickly get out of their system. Eventually, Princess General Leia calls upon an old favor from her old pal, Yendor. The Twi'lek had been a starfighter pilot in the rebellion, and after the war, returned to Ryloth to help rebuild his home planet. He would later become an ambassador for Ryloth to the New Republic. More than a decade ago, Leia had helped Yendor and Ryloth fight off a Nikto cartel which had been blockading the planet. And so now the Twi'lek leader had to pay it back by allowing the Resistance to stay on their world. Now, Yendor had retired from public office and was now at the head of an organization known as the Ryloth Defense Authority. This organization was the spiritual successor of Cham Syndulla's Free Ryloth movement. This was an organization created during a time of peace because the Twi'leks had a lot of experience with occupation, and they wanted to make sure that the next time any authoritarian government came and tried to enslave them, they would be ready to fight back. So the RDA served as a highly secretive paramilitary organization that could fight back against any invader, even if the government on Lesu fell. Now, Yendor is technically neutral because the RDA is neutral, but he does give the Resistance some shelter, which is a big deal, and he also sends his own son on a Resistance mission to retrieve a list of First Order criminals. And when the Resistance is betrayed by the Twi'lek government and the First Order comes knocking at the RDA's secret base, Yendor's family is thrown right into the middle of the fray, and his daughter Hachni is amongst the first casualties. When the Resistance escapes Ryloth, Yendor is piloting one of the X-Wings and once again fighting alongside Princess Leia. One of my favorite characters is Shriv Shurgoth, a Duros male who was well versed in the art of sarcasm, cynicism, and starfighter piloting. A veteran of the Galactic Civil War, Shriv fought alongside Rebel heroes like Nien Nunb, Lando Calrissian, Leia Organa, and was especially close to the famous Inferno Squad, a unit of Imperial Special Forces that had defected to the Rebellion shortly after the Battle of Fondor. Shriv would serve as the third member of Inferno Squad next to Iden Versio and Del Meeko, and they would fight together during the Battle of Jakku. During the Cold War period, almost 30 years later, the First Order and the New Republic are settled into an uneasy peace. Iden Versio and Del Meeko were both killed while pursuing the First Order's secretive Project Resurrection, which was a recruitment strategy the First Order used in which they abducted children and brainwashed and trained them to become stormtroopers. Shriv would basically take in the young daughter of Del and Iden Versio, Zay Versio, and raised her as the grumpy uncle he kind of already was to her. During the evacuation of Dakar, Inferno Squad, which was made up of just Shriv and Zay by this point, was assigned to go and find Leia's allies in the Outer Rim territories. But like many Resistance agents sent out to find Leia's allies, they were unsuccessful because the First Order had already started prematurely rounding up all of those allies in the first place. Shriv and Zay would be sent on another mission by Leia to steal new ships for the Resistance from the scrapyard world of Bracca. You know, the place where Cal Kestis found work after Order 66, but now instead of breaking down Clone Wars era ships, the scrapper guilds were breaking down New Republic ships that had survived Hosnian Prime and had been seized by the First Order. Shrove and Zay's team manages to steal about half a dozen X-Wings, including a Rebel T-65B, a New Republic T-85, and 4 T-70s. I'm sure we'll see these fighters eventually in Episode 9. Black Squadron was probably the most elite Resistance starfighter squadron in the Resistance, and after the whole evacuation of Dakar, probably the only squadron left. It should also be noted that Poe Dameron is kind of a nutjob, and when a nutjob is your squad leader, you can expect yourself in some dangerous situations. But still, before the evacuation of Dakar starts, Temmin, Snap Wexley, his wife Carrie Coon, Sir Linda, Javosend, and Jessica Pava are sent on a mission to the Outer Rim to gather Leia's allies to help their fight against the First Order. These 4 members of Black Squadron, aside from Poe Dameron, would be the only members of Black Squadron to survive the evacuation of Dakar. Jessica Pava and Sir Linda Javos made a good pair and went on a few adventures trying their best to recruit fearful citizens of the galaxy to their cause. Together they shot down TIE fighters and fought spooky ghosts. Jess was from the lush, watery world of Dandaron, located in Hutt space. She was known by all the Resistance droids as the Great Destroyer because of how many astromechs she'd been through. Growing up, her family had been preyed upon and captured by pirates, giving her a lifelong desire to be in control of her own future and a hatred for being chained up. As a child, Jess also idolized Luke Skywalker, who at the time was known as the Jedi Knight who had helped defeat the Empire. Sir Linda Javos was a female Squamaton, which is why she's blue. Now, when it comes to blue aliens, it's oftentimes hard to know which aliens are evil and which ones are not. While Twi'leks and Chiss are usually pretty cool, the Na'vi, who were also blue, were not and liked to have sex with their animals. Squamatons were pretty creepy. They had sharp, pointy teeth, talons for nails, extendable limbs, and they were also capable of spitting acid. Usually, we recommend burning such aliens from a distance with a flamethrower. The M1 flamethrower used in World War II against the Japanese had a maximum range of 141 feet. So you can use something like that to take out a nasty alien from almost a half a football field away. The more you know. Her physical features aside, though, Sir Linda was actually a pretty cool Resistance fighter. She had originally served alongside Poe Dameron in the New Republic, and then she decided to quit that job and become a journalist for the Galaxy Beacon. On one assignment, Sir Linda used her friendship with Poe Dameron to try to gain access to the secret Resistance base, which ultimately led her to joining the Resistance. She was the newest member of the team and regarded with some suspicion by Jess, but ultimately would prove herself in combat. Then there was the dynamic duo, Temmin Snap Wexley and his wife, Carrie Coon. When Poe Dameron wasn't around, Snap was the leader of Black Squadron. Born on the planet of Akiva, his father was a member of the Rebel Alliance and captured pretty early on in the war, so Snap was actually raised by a single mother who really wasn't there most of the time. At a young age, Snap repurposed an old B-1 battle droid and outfitted it with all sorts of blades, blasters, and armor, making it essentially a killing machine. When the Battle of Yavin occurred, Temmin was still just a kid, but by the time of the Battle of Jakku, he had already started taking starfighter lessons and was fighting alongside his mother against the Empire. Later on, as a pilot for the Resistance, Snap Wexley would run into Carrie Coon, and the two would develop a relationship. Carrie Coon was a Victory Kid. That's someone who was born after the Empire's collapse. She had been Poe Dameron's second in Rapier Squadron back when they both had served the New Republic Navy. Snap's mom, Nora Wesley, was also quite an important figure in the Resistance. She had fought in the Galactic Civil War with the Rebellion. After her husband had been captured by the Empire, she relentlessly pursued any trace of him. Unfortunately, this meant that Snap had to raise himself. Nora would meet another famous rebel hero, Wedge Antilles, after the Battle of Endor. Wedge had gone on a secret mission behind enemy lines and had been captured by Admiral Ray Sloan. Wedge had been tortured pretty badly during this ordeal and had to spend a lot of time on Chandrila just recuperating. While there, he trained New Republic pilots, including Snap. Wedge and Nora would meet each other and eventually fall in love. After the Galactic Civil War, Nora and Wedge would settle down together on Akiva and retire from fighting altogether. After the Battle of Crate, Snap Wexley and Carrie Coon were sent to Akiva 7 to convince Wedge Antilles and Nora Wesley out of retirement, and it works at least momentarily, and they do help on one mission, but we're not really sure if they'll go back into retirement or be seen in Rise of Skywalker. It also should be noted that the actor who plays Wedge Antilles mentioned he didn't want to be in another Star Wars movie because he found the role boring. But I'm sure Disney's endless amounts of money will convince him otherwise. Speaking of Wedge Antilles, while he was on Chandrila, he formed the famous Phantom Squadron. It's basically the same thing as Legends VIII Squadron minus Horse Guy over here, which has to be the laziest alien design I've ever seen. The idea behind Phantom Squadron was to find some misfits, crazies, and criminals and use their unique set of skills to fight the Empire. They're kind of also similar to Suicide Squad in that way. When the Resistance was at its lowest moments, several members of Phantom Squadron were convinced to come out of retirement for their old boss Wedge. Amongst them was Sanric Stronghammer, a towering individual too large to fit in anything smaller than a U-Wing, but also a hell of a pilot. Unfortunately, he didn't fare so well during the Resistance's mission to Baraka. Then there was Pacer Goya, who came with his father's flight suit. His father was an original member of Phantom Squadron, and also Wesson Dove, who was another original member of Phantom Squadron. Unfortunately, a few of the unknown Phantom Squadron members die along the way, but we should see this famous squadron revived in one way or another. On top of all of these guys we've mentioned, Rey, Finn, Leia, Lieutenant Connix, Poe, Rose, Chewie, BB-8, R2-D2, C-3PO are all still alive. Ransom Cassifro, an old friend of Leia's from when she was in the New Republic Senate, also manages to escape from a First Order prison and most likely will join the Resistance as well. Fellow Alderaanian General Riken, who's been with Leia since the Battle of Hoth, somehow has made it as well. Pruneface, or Orimarco, has returned to represent the Dracelians, and Nien Nunb and Lando Calrissian should be back and ready to help pilot the Millennium Falcon once again as well. Now, we know that in Rise of Skywalker there are going to be some massive battles between the First Order and the Resistance's ragtag fleet, so it is interesting to see who's going to make it back. Some old faces and also some new faces that will be introduced. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.